Week 16 is nearly in the books, just Packers and Saints tonight, but the playoff races could not be hotter. We're breaking it down today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets. If you win that first $5 bet, just visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Joe, happy Festivus to you today here on the show.
Seinfeld reference, right?
Festivus is a secular holiday celebrated on December 23rd as an alternative to the perceived pressures and commercialism of the holiday season.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Seinfeld reference.
Can you just make that a little bit more straightforward? What are we actually celebrating here?
It's like all of the gift and buying things element of the holiday season.
Okay.
And then it's like very tongue in cheek where there's like an airing of the grievances.
Yeah, I knew that was it. The airing of the grievances. That's the thing I was looking for. There's
feats of strength, the dinner, but you sit down and you tell everybody all the exceptions you had with everybody all year long with the airings of grievances.
It's outstanding.
Maybe, I guess, the alternative of the Levy Grail, which we're going to do tomorrow for some teams eliminated from the playoffs.
Correct.
Which we tell you why you should be excited about your future, even though your team didn't make the playoffs. Maybe the airing of grievances would be sitting down and telling you all the reasons why you should be mad that your team didn't make the playoffs instead. But we're not going to do that today. We're going to look at the Week 16 results, how it impacts the NFL draft race, the NFC playoff race, which is setting up for a winner takes one seed matchup here in that's week 18, right? Detroit, Minnesota.
Setting up. Yeah.
1 week away from a barn burner. And then the AFC playoff race where there's a couple of teams, 3 teams in particular, as a matter of fact, who are trying to chase down either the Chargers or the Broncos in the final 2 weeks. Back 2 games with 2 games left to play.
A lot of fascinating stuff. Obviously, the Chiefs, their magic number is 1. They win one more game. They are the 1 seed. They get by the Chargers on the Saturday game.
Can I give you a question, though?
Of course.
Because the Chiefs take care of business, and they won this weekend. But if you're the Chiefs, even if you know that you're clinching the bye, you're playing the starters for some of Week 18, right? You're not going to give the whole starting unit 2 weeks off, are you?
You can't. I mean, like, you just numbers-wise, you cannot do it. So they'll have to make their choices.
But Texans, the team that lost to the Chiefs, that was obviously one of the early Saturday game. Yeah, it's a good place to start here. Texans banged up football team. And at a couple of spots where you looked at them at the beginning of the season and felt like they had a lot at their disposal. I think it's a nice reminder of there's no such thing as too many of probably anything in the NFL, but Tank Dell goes down with a really ugly knee injury that's being reported as a dislocated kneecap. But the full severity of that is kind of to be determined. Steph Diggs obviously down for the year. I think that's my worry for Houston. Like, even though they're locked in with the AFC South, which they clinched in Week 15, they're a team that is probably going to draw the loser of Ravens Steelers, the second game on Saturday. And that's a matchup for Houston that I don't think is a particularly favorable one. So this loss for Houston, I think you feel it because it really does feel like it slams the door shut on anything other than just the 4 seed for you.
Right, and then on some offensive line injuries on top of that. It's a shame because I think defensively they got some good stuff cooking. But even at linebacker, right, the injuries kind of piling up there, or availability issues, if you will, at linebacker. So for Houston, they're going to win their division. They're probably going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. I don't necessarily think they built upon what was a breakthrough year it felt like last year. But I think for them to be as uneven as they are, Stroud kind of taking some lumps here in year 2, for them to still be in that position is a good spot. But, are they going to be a good team in the AFC, or are they going to be a great team in the AFC? I think we'll find out more in 2025.
Is it fair to say you can apply that to a number of teams, like even a couple of teams that might not make the play, like Cincinnati? Like their defense is a mess. But for them to be in this position when they were 4-8?
Yeah.
Where like if you go through their playoff scenarios, they beat the Browns 24-6. Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback. Here's everything you need to know about Cleveland offensively with DTR at quarterback. The Bengals were 31st in the league, averaging about 28 points allowed per game. And they scored 6. The Browns scored 6 points.
At least they found out, right? They
found out. Now, are they going to ride him the rest of the way? We'll find out. But that's a conversation for segment 3. But Cincinnati to look up, and they got Denver and then Pittsburgh, 2 games they could very easily lose, but you could very easily blink, and Cincinnati's finishing 9-8 again this year. And I know that is a frustrating spot for fans to be, because it feels like it's in limbo a little bit. But it just really resonated with me where you talk about the Texans and didn't necessarily catapult or build off of last year, but they're in a respectable position regardless. Like, I think that can be applied to the Bengals too.
Yeah, and I think the Bengals are in the position that they're in and have been in this position because of their operational choices, right? They don't have the depth that they typically do. They don't have the defensive talent that they typically do. They haven't really done the things that they needed to do to make their offensive line and run game better. So it's like Joe Burrow throwing the ball to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, and that's awesome, and it's really good, and it makes you a dangerous football team, but they just can't get the rest of it right. And I worry about this being a perpetual cycle for Cincinnati, especially as they stare at big contract decisions for Chase and Higgins while they still have defensive stuff to figure out. They still have the run game stuff to figure out. And I don't think that they're going to check all the boxes. So I wonder if Cincinnati's going to kind of perpetually be in this spot. Although if they do get in, nobody wants to face Burrow. He's that type of quarterback. So good team, but I just worry that they're always going to be, playing with a bit of a disadvantage because of operationally how they choose to function.
Well, they're going to have to do what they did when they made their first leap in general, which was catch lightning in a bottle with the draft. I think that's how they break this cycle and give themselves another sustainable multi-year window.
What a silly thing to be talking about when Joe Burrow is your quarterback. But I know you're dialed in on this wild card race, which is fascinating. The top 5 seeds are pretty much locked in. 6, 7 up for grabs with Colts, Dolphins, Bengals knocking on the door. What are some of your big thoughts on how that's going to shake out?
I think the Chargers, obviously, from the 2 teams that have the easiest remaining path from an opponent perspective are the Chargers and the Colts. I mean, the Chargers finish with Patriots and Raiders. What's interesting, though, is both of those games are on the road.
Yeah.
So for a West Coast team to have to come east and play New England, who just gave the Bills some fits, I don't think it's a layup game, but from a strength of schedule perspective, they're a team that you look at. Patriots and Raiders, those teams are both picking in the top 6. I think the Patriots right now are picking 2.
Yeah.
And the Raiders are picking 6 after the win that they had over Jacksonville. So they're in a very favorable spot from an opponent perspective. The Colts have the Jaguars week 18, and they have the Giants this week upcoming. You're probably going to win both those games. The Dolphins have the Browns and the Jets. Now, both of those are road games as well, but I mean, those 2 teams have a combined 7 wins.
Right.
So I think you could really see like multiple teams run the table here. And then you have the Broncos, who have to go to Cincinnati and play the Bengals. and then they finished with the Chiefs. So I'm just very leery of Denver, even though they're in a great place and they can get in without winning another game if they get the right kind of help. I wouldn't want to play Cincinnati right now.
No.
As a team, in the Broncos, who started fast against the Chargers and then completely fell off the seams, what do I think Joe Burrow's going to do to you? Right?
Dice you up.
And then it just comes down to week 18, what does Kansas City have to play for? And I think that's where you see the magnitude of the Christmas Day game with Pittsburgh and Kansas City. If Pittsburgh wins that game, I think the Broncos suddenly become in a very precarious situation for either Miami or Indianapolis to chase them down.
Pittsburgh dropping 2 in a row. I mean, obviously good opponents. They lose at Philly, at Baltimore. Big win for Baltimore, right? I think we probably overlooked that. I mean,
did we?
Well, Russ with the fumble, right, on the long run, and then the pick six. Yeah. I mean, that was the decisive part of this game.
Can't make those plays in that game.
No, not especially when you're shorthanded without Pickens. And now they're putting, I mean, Pittsburgh, they want to be the 3 seed, I'm sure. They finished with Kansas City in Cincinnati. So,
yeah. And then Baltimore, that race for this. I mean, Baltimore is on the road on a Wednesday on Christmas playing the Texans this week. They play in 48 hours. That's
dude, it was crazy. You're seeing injury reports during Sunday afternoon games.
Yeah.
What is going on right now?
Yeah. But then the Ravens finish at home against the Browns. So Baltimore, I think it's fascinating. Both Baltimore and Pittsburgh play on Christmas.
Yeah.
Because that sets the stage, obviously, for those AFC North. Hard Knocks gets exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And you get extra rest building up to those games, too.
If the Bills have a hiccup against the Jets or Patriots in the final 2, the Ravens could be the 2 seed.
Yeah.
Because they have the tiebreaker over Buffalo. So the Bills could also win this week and clinch the 2. So tons of stuff going on.
Right.
It's unsettled. You know what we'll do, Kyle? We'll play them all.
And we'll see what happens.
We'll see what freaking happens.
I thought you were going to say it with me.
Well, I wanted to kind of share it with you. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's share our thoughts on the NFC next.
Yeah, you got it.
All right, stick with us.
Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes, and they have Venmo now. I'm a big Venmo guy. Makes it real simple. For Monday Night Football tonight, here's what I'm looking at. Jordan Love, more than 232.5 passing yards, and Josh Jacobs, more than 90.5 rushing yards. That Saints rushing defense, not that good. I think they're going to ride Jacobs, and Jordan Love's going to get his production on a primetime scene. It's quick, it's simple, and it's so much fun to challenge myself and my friends. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly. After your first $5 lineup, that's $50 instantly when you play just $5 over at Prize Picks. Run your game.
As a Jalen Hurts fantasy owner of a team that went 12 of a team that went 12-2 and had a first round bye.
Yeah.
I was devastated. Not as devastated as Philly probably is. To lose that game to Washington. Now,
catch the ball, Devonta. Catch the ball.
Obviously, Jalen's health is first and foremost, and hope he's back on the field as soon as possible. But he's been a workhorse. And Philly in that spot, it's a tough spot. The biggest question I have is how many points does Philly score if Jalen doesn't get hurt?
A lot. A lot of points, Kyle.
But a crushing blow for Philly and their outlook now with 2 games left to play. Now that they've got winnable games on the schedule with Dallas, but Dallas is punching up.
Yeah, like, what a
win last night for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, for as much as Washington getting this win over Philly is probably the story of the NFC, I think Dallas and both sides of that game, Tampa's side of that equation, they're now on the outside looking in. They were leading that division. The Falcons beat the Giants. They lose to Dallas. Now they don't control their own destiny anymore.
Right.
But do you start to get the impression, and this even started last week, listening to Jerry Jones, seems like he's pretty in on Mike McCarthy. Like, I don't know that this is a slam dunk that McCarthy's going to be gone as the head coach of this football team.
I think his big fish went to North Carolina. So I think when that happened,
look at Kyle Crabbs reading the tea leaves. You're probably right about that.
So I don't think it's a coincidence the tone changed.
Big time.
Yeah.
Good call.
Off the market.
Good call.
But kudos to Dallas for playing the way that they did against a red-hot Tampa Bay team and getting that turnover late after that great play by Baker to get out of the grasp and get Rachaad White the ball. But Cooper Rush, how many passing yards did he have in the first half of that game? It was like 230 passing yards in the first half of that game.
He's been productive, man. He really has.
That's crazy for Tampa. I guess the way that happens is Dallas not really a strength running the ball. So you come out firing and you find a way that Brandon Aubrey's hitting every kick under the sun. Doesn't matter where you line him up to kick it.
Would you trade a first-round pick?
I might. just for the bit.
I'm just glad we have a new kicker to talk about in that sense. Yeah.
Justin Tucker.
No.
But Dallas has 2 playoff teams the rest of the way. They've got Philly and they've got Washington to finish. They got a chance to spoil somebody's season here.
It could be Washington.
Washington's got Atlanta and Dallas to finish.
And Atlanta, obviously, they got to win their games. If they win their games, they're going to win. They're the 4 seed, right? It's what's going to happen here. Well, I guess technically they could jump the Rams as the 3 seed. So it's right there for Atlanta. I don't know that you can glean much.
I feel like there's less settled about the NFC than there is the AFC with 2 weeks left to play. Just looking at like the seeding permutations and there's Tampa's on the outside looking in, Seattle's on the outside looking in. Those teams are both 8-7. Like they can get into
100%. And there's a lot of like Vikings can go from the 5 to the 1.
Right.
And
like the 3 and 4 influx. There's technically 4 teams in competition for the 3 seed with the Rams, the Seahawks, who are right behind them, the Falcons and the Bucks. Those are all teams like in contention, like could feasibly be the 3 seed.
Yeah, I know, dude. So can we talk about Penix and like his debut?
Yeah.
I watched some of that game. I don't think he played great, but did it matter against that Giants team? That Giants team didn't have anything, dude. I think it's good that he got reps and played. But it's hard to know if they're ready to go beat the Commanders. And certainly the Panthers are going to be competitive out in the last week of the season. They'd love nothing more to end their season with a win over Atlanta in Charlotte. Or actually being in Atlanta to close out their season. So I think they still have I know that Tampa's probably not feeling great right now, but they finish with Panthers and Saints. I just feel like it's more likely that the Falcons will slip up, but at the same time, the Bucs just lost to Dallas. Like that's a game they need to take care of. I wonder though, can you see a world where Tampa moves on from Todd Bowles and just elevates Liam Cohen? Because
I think Liam Cohen is going to be an extremely highly coveted head coaching candidate.
It'd be tough to pull him away from Baker to stick with Todd Bowles, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if they do it or not, but
I think you maybe have to collapse, right? I think you have to lose to the Panthers and the Saints at home the final 2 weeks, and then like maybe you can have that conversation.
I hate that it comes down to it because it feels like from a process perspective, I think some of the warts that have always existed with Todd Bowles are going to be, they're just going to make it a little bit harder on your team.
Yeah, where it's like there's that dynamic exists with probably half the coaches in the league.
I know.
And it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And Todd's resume's got some success on it. Hey, how about you mentioned the Panthers. Cardinals got eliminated with a loss.
They're out. Wasn't that cold,
Joe? This Cardinals team.
The Arizona Fraudinals?
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Been sitting on that for a while.
Did you see how many rushing yards this team gave up?
Every time I watched, Chuba Hubbard was cooking, so I'm guessing it was a lot.
240 rushing yards.
Dan Morgan said, this is why we pay $200 million for guards.
That's right. You got Chuba Hubbard, guy can run hard downhill. You paid crazy dollars to these two offensive linemen. And you kind of knew that the Cardinals secondary in the midst of their build has been built from the back four. That's a tease for the pick I gave him in my mock for the 33rd team that dropped this morning. But those numbers were just mind-boggling for me for a Cardinals team that was playing for their playoff lives. And you got two Carolina, and talk about playing in the cold, and Carolina jumped on them early. Arizona didn't look like they were ready to play the game at the start of the game. It was rough. It's a rough showing.
It felt like Kyler, man, it's like the situational moments. He just doesn't have it, dude. And he goes down so easy. So easy.
Protect yourself.
I don't know.
I'm never going to dog a quarterback for protecting himself. Come on.
You see but the logo.
You see the logo hanging on the wall behind me here?
This guy gets touched and he goes down, man. Like, I don't know about this Kyler Murray. I never have known about this Kyler Murray. So obviously a ton of intrigue left in the NFC. The NFL draft order, still very much a wild situation. We're going to talk about that. Yep. Maybe a couple of thoughts on the outstanding college football playoff that we saw this weekend as well. Folks, be sure to stick with us. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many different ways for you to get a win. I love betting on different things. I love the player props. I love the live in-game betting. I love looking at over-unders, particularly like the team point over-unders. That makes it really fun if you kind of have certain expectations, see where they have those props, and see if you can, make a little money on a Sunday afternoon. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
We have one team in the NFL with 2 wins. New York Giants closing in. They've lost 10 in a row. Only one other team has lost more than half as many games in a row. 5. Than the Giants have lost 10. Do you know who it is?
The Bears.
The Chicago Bears.
Yeah, Bears. Keep losing.
From 4-2 and up on the final play from scrimmage against Washington, which would have moved them to 5-2, to 4-11, have lost 9. And their reward for losing 9 games in a row and being 4-11 is currently scheduled to pick 9th.
Terrible, right? You like to think that's going to get you a top 5 pick. It's not.
There are 8 teams separated by 1 win with 2 weeks left to play. There are some teams that are going to be absolutely ticked with how few wins they had this year and how bad their pick is in the top 10 order, which is not where you want to be. You do not want to be in the back half of the top 10 this year's class.
Do you see the Giants beating the Colts or the Eagles?
No, they're done.
So the #1
pick is going.
Yeah, so they're going to finish the season losing 12 in a row. Like, I'm sorry, that's it. That's a wrap on Daboll and Shane. That's got to be a wrap. And then it just becomes really interesting based on all the dynamics, right? Who they hire. Is it signed off on Dion? We're going to have really weird conversations about that.
Dion seemed to be pretty receptive. He was on with, was it Rich Eisen? He was on somewhere recently and seemed pretty dismissive of the idea that either the Giants or the Raiders would be spots that he would be unhappy with Shedeur going to play. But do you take that? Or, I mean, there's a whole ceiling versus floor debate, I think, with those two quarterbacks at the top.
Of course. Yeah, I saw your mock draft had it going a little bit different way.
Now, what happens? New England, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Cleveland round out the top 5. The Raiders won and beat the Jaguars and now pick 6, also at 3-12.
From 1 to 6. That was the cost of the Raiders win.
Yes. And Antonio Pierce was asked about after the game. You see what he said?
I didn't see it. What did he say?
Ask Tom Telesco.
Really?
I say something about the implications of winning and going from a top pick to number 6. He said, "Ask Tom Telesco."
It's his
Nice to
job to
talk
go out there
about.
and win games, right?
That's
That's what he's
right. It's
supposed
nice
to
to
do.
not talk about losing anymore
Yeah.
per week. But that has potential to be a very costly win because you look at Tennessee needs quarterback. The Browns, feasibly, if Tennessee passed, if they went the Kirk Cousins route, Cleveland could feasibly draft a quarterback to set up their exit ramp from Deshaun Watson. So you're behind now 3 quarterback hungry teams as Las Vegas in a class that I think most people would say have 2 first round picks at quarterback, maybe 3 if Milroe comes out. And that's like, we got to get something.
Yeah.
And that's not great process to build the team with. But we've seen teams do it all the time. That's how Mac Jones goes in the top 15.
Right. So, man, there's gonna be 4-win teams that are picking way lower than they should. Kyle, we saw the 12-team expanded college football playoffs, and it wasn't very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Is this are we learning a hard lesson here? Is it a weird year? What are your thoughts here, man? I was excited to kind of see some of these games and watch college football really for the first time all year. And let me tell you what it didn't do. It didn't rope me in. Those games weren't close.
So I'm gonna be honest. I don't think there's any way, shape, or form that you could make an argument that Arizona State and Boise State should have buys. I think that's your number one problem. Is I think you had overqualified teams sitting on the outside looking in from a seeding perspective because they decided the top 4 ranked conference champions are going to get buys.
Yeah, it seems silly, right?
So Penn State, after beating SMU, is now going to go on the road to Boise State to play or their next playoff game. And that, I don't know, like from a seeding perspective, like Ohio State, I think Penn State, teams like that had great cases. Texas had great cases to have a bye over Boise State.
Yeah.
So I think that's your biggest issue that you now have to resolve. And I get like the theory behind it, but your committee should probably sit down and do the same thing that they were doing when they were deciding just arbitrarily who the 4 teams are that's going to make the 4-team playoff. And rank them accordingly, and whatever order you rank them in, those are the teams that get the buys. So
you're like, okay, 12 is fine. We just have to stack them up differently.
If you're going to accept 12 teams for playoff, you're always betting on, I think, an outlier where you have this much preparation and you're playing home field advantage games with this much preparation for teams that are this good.
Yeah,
I think the vast majority of higher seeded teams are going to win by multiple scores. Like realistically, I don't think we have 12 teams that would be legitimate contenders for a national championship. I think you have 5 or 6. But I think that's the risk of, everybody wanted this. I don't know what you expected was going to happen. This is what you wanted.
I did not. I think I wanted 6. And I think the hard part's always going to be the last couple of spots, whether it's 2 teams, whether it's 4, whether it's 6, 8, whatever number it is, the last couple of spots are going to be difficult. But you want to talk about the overcorrection of the century. Mm-hmm. It's just invite everybody to the party. That's absolutely insane. And you got a major flop of a weekend. And especially because like the NFL said, we don't care. We're putting our games on.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I gave the college football playoff games about 7 minutes of the first quarter of each one of them. And I said, nope, I'm going to watch competitive games.
And even when they had their spotlight game, it was Ohio State and Tennessee. And I was excited. I coming off watching the NFL all day. It's like, here we go. This is kind of like a standalone college game. I'll check them out. I mean, you knew immediately that Tennessee didn't have the stuff to hang in that game.
I think the proof of concept has always been here with the FCS. I want to read some of the scores of the first round of the FCS playoff games. Okay. Montana State over UT Martin, 49-17. Idaho over Lehigh, 34-13. UC Davis over Illinois State, 42-10. South Dakota State over Montana, 35-18. You had some play-in games that were competitive for lower seeds. But when you cast this large a net, the discrepancy of teams is just so large.
Yeah.
And it's been like the first two rounds of the FCS playoffs have generally been unwatchable because those powerhouse programs just blow the doors off everybody.
Right.
And then it gets to the end and it's very competitive. And every once in a while you have a Cinderella team that runs through, but they're Cinderella because they're Cinderella, not because it happens every year.
Yeah.
If you stay with 12 and you stay with this formatting, I think this is what you generally have to expect for the first round of the college football playoff.
Well, everyone's probably going to give it I think you'll probably tune in, and if it's competitive, you'll stick with it. But nobody's going to sit there and watch a 4-score game in the second quarter for love of the game, right? I mean, especially when there's alternatives.
Who you got in the FCS championship, by the way? Montana State or North Dakota State?
I feel like those teams play every year. We got the Grizz versus the Bison.
No, it's not Montana. It's Montana State.
What are the Bobcats?
I think they're the Bobcats. I was really hoping for our Jacks to pull it out.
Took an L.
They lost to North Dakota State 28-7 or 28-21.
Wow. So Montana State versus North Dakota State. Wow.
Mm-hmm. North Dakota State's, I think that's their 11th appearance in the FCS championship game.
Doing it well.
But the rivalry with South Dakota State was real because the quarterback at Cam Miller at North Dakota State after the game said, I hate South Dakota State. Now that we beat them, I could say it. I hate them. Give us rivalries like that. That's going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. We are looking at some of the teams that were officially eliminated from the playoff field tomorrow. So you have that to look forward to, looking for reasons to be optimistic for some of those teams looking forward. And then we are off Wednesday, Thursday, previewing. Well, I guess, Joe, we're going to preview that, or we're going to pick the Christmas games.
Yeah. We'll have to pick them tomorrow.
We'll pick them tomorrow. So we'll split the preview a little bit. We'll throw a little bit of that there at the tail end. Then we'll preview the rest of week 17 on Friday, and then takes on Thursday, and then takes on Friday. So that's the week we have to look forward to. We hope you will come back and see us. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. We are out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow.